Hey everybody, it's Emily Dark Schooling, and today I'm going to bring you my October reading wrap-up. I had a fairly productive month. I have to say, I feel like October went on forever. It felt like the endless month. It started out great, but towards the end of the month, things just started to I don't know. It was rough. We had to go out of town for a week. Then when we came home, our power was out for 2 days, so it was just kind of ridiculous. But all in all, I had a pretty good reading month. I read 8 books in the month of October. Some of those I read with my children, and some were just me reading to myself. So let's just kind of get into it, and I'll show you what I read. First up, I have 172 Hours on the Moon by Johan Harstad. I have somewhat mixed feelings about this. I liked it by the time I finished it. I gave this about 3.5 stars, I think. I love the premise of this book. It's really weird, really creepy. I kind of have, I wouldn't say I have a fear of space, but I definitely have a solid respect for staying on Earth. I've read and seen enough stuff about space that makes me not want to go there. But this book, the premise is that there's something going on the moon. You don't really know what, but there's something that went wrong when they did the moon landing, and they've been wanting to go back, but they need to come up with a way to make people get excited about it. So they host this worldwide contest to have 3 teens go up on the mission to the moon. So it's exciting and new and fresh, and these kids will be world famous. And so these 3 teenagers all get picked from the drawing, and they get to go to the moon. But there is something on the moon already, and things go wrong. So I love the premise. This book took forever to build. It was just so slow in the beginning, and I almost DNF'd it. But something told me to keep going, because I kept thinking it's got to get better. Once they get to the moon, it's going to get better. And it did. Once they got to the moon, it did improve. So the second half of this book I thought was great. The YA horror. So for that, I was impressed, because usually YA is just not very frightening at all to me. And while I wasn't scared per se, I did find it very suspenseful and very creepy. Enjoyed this book, 3.5 stars. I also read the 3rd book in the Lock and Key graphic novel series, and it's as good as the other ones. I have no complaints. This is a solid series. I'm very intrigued at where it's going, and I'm really looking forward to picking up more. This series follows the Locke family and their experiences as they move into this new house after a tragedy strikes their family, and they have to kind of get themselves back together again and get on with their lives. And they move into this weird house, and they keep finding all these weird keys, and something is after the keys, and it's really interesting and so weird. I have to say, Joe Hill, his imagination, it's a crazy place up here, but I love it. Everything he writes is so weird, but also so good. So I love the series. I'm looking forward to finishing it up. Next up, I have Bird Box by Josh Malerman. I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. I found it very intriguing, very suspenseful. I love the idea he set up here of this thing outside that if you see it, you lose your mind and go crazy. And you have to navigate, if you leave your house, you have to navigate the world blindfolded. And that is so scary to me. I think we take for granted the fact that we can see and that we know where we're going. We use our eyes a lot. And to lose that, I don't know, that's scary to me. And to not know, not just not being able to see, but to not know what it is that's making this happen. Oh, that's so scary. That's so creepy. And I found that whole idea really intriguing. I liked the character, the main character, and the fact that her children are never named. They're just boy and girl, and that she has these 2 4-year-old children that she has to get through this world to get to a safer place. And it's just so different from other things that I've read, and I really appreciated that. It's a really interesting read, and I highly recommend it if you're wanting to read something definitely creepy, but that isn't going to be too scary. Okay, the rest of the books that I read this month are all children's books. I'm going to start with World Without Fish by Mark Kurlansky, because this one was one that I'd had on my shelf for a while, but I'd really been wanting to read it. He is also the author of Salt, and I want to say Cod, possibly. I think this is the children's version of Cod. I haven't read either of those, but they're all in my TBR. But this one in particular is a children's book all about what is happening in the oceans right now and what we can do about it. And it was really interesting, really just information that I kind of, in the fringes of my mind, had an idea that this was something that was happening, but I had never really looked into it. And so now that I've read this, I want to learn more and find out more about this problem. I kind of want to read his book Cod and see how it compares. But this is basically all about the problems of not just pollution and climate change, but also overfishing, and how our need for more fish on the market is causing a lot of problems in the oceans, and what will happen as a result of that. I highly recommend this. It's very, very well written and very interesting. So definitely recommend you pick this up. This is a 4-star read. I also read Wish Tree by Katherine Applegate. I pre-ordered this because I love Katherine Applegate's other book, The One and Only Ivan. I loved that book, and when I read the premise about this one, I was so intrigued that I was like, I need this book. And this was one I read in basically a sitting, because it captivated me, and it wasn't very long. I think this book is just over 200 pages. Yeah, just over 200 pages. And there are pictures, and they're very nicely illustrated. This book is about a tree. The tree is narrating the story, which I found really interesting. And this tree is talking about its history in this neighborhood, and it's called the Wish Tree because once a year everyone makes a wish and ties their wish to the tree, and it's the tradition in this town. And one year this new family moves into the town right across the street from the tree, and they are a family of Muslims, and one day someone carves leave on the tree, and this kind of sets off a whole bunch of events. And one of the things that I loved about this one is that it tackles a topic like that without being overly preachy, which is important because I don't think children appreciate getting preached at. So I love that she was able to tackle this topic of being sensitive to other people and tolerance and all of that without just, shoving it down your throat. But I also loved so much the characters in the story are almost all animals, and they are so sweet. I love the way she plays around with animals and how they name themselves. Animals give themselves names, and so some animals, like the crows, like to be named after sounds that they like. So you have crows named Dingo, because she likes the bongo drums, and you've got raccoons. The raccoons are too busy to think of names, so they're just all you, and you, which I think is hilarious. So I really loved the way she plays around with names. They're really funny. The possums are all named after things they're afraid of, which is hilarious. So I loved this book. There are so many different things happening, but she weaves them all together in a really sweet and interesting way. I highly recommend it. This would make a great read aloud for the middle grade set. Probably, I would say 7 and up would really appreciate this book. So highly recommend it. I gave this 4.5 stars. My daughter and I read Human Body Theater by Maris Wicks this past month, and actually we read this over the course of about 2 months. We took our time with it. This book is phenomenal. I loved it. We're probably going to read it again because it's now my daughter's favorite book ever. It's a graphic novel all about the human body, and the way that the illustrations are done is just super cute, and that was my daughter's favorite thing ever. She loved looking at all the pictures of the germs in the different parts of your body and bacteria and bones and muscles, and it's just really well done. I love that it's a lot of information. I mean, I learned things in this book. This has a lot of really good and solid, well-written information, but it's told in a really interesting and fun way. So it's not just like reading a lot of facts. You're involved in the story because it's the human body is putting on a play, basically. And the host is the skeleton, and she's introducing all the parts of the body, and by the end, the host puts all the parts together to make its body. And I thought that was such a clever idea, and it's really well illustrated, really fun to read. I highly recommend this. 5 stars. And that 5 stars comes from my 8-year-old who thinks it's the best book ever. Also with my 8-year-old, we read Trumpet of the Swan by E.B. White. I can't really say anything about this that hasn't already been said. This book is phenomenal. It's one of my favorite read-alouds. I love it so much. It's such a great book to read aloud, and there's so many things you can go on rabbit trails with. Because we traveled this month, it brought some new information to my daughter because we had to drive through Pennsylvania, and she didn't realize that Philadelphia was in Pennsylvania, and that made her super excited. And just getting to see the different parts of the country where the swans travel. This is a great book to use if you're studying American geography, because they travel all over the country, and so you get a lot of different perspective viewpoints from different parts of the country, and that's great. And I love that the story is just such a sweet one about a swan born with no voice and how he overcomes that disability, and I think that's just a great story. The last book I read this month was with my teens, and it took us forever. I don't know what was going on. This is not a long book, but we read The Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. This is the first book in the Discworld series, and for some reason it took us 2 months to get through it. I know some of it was that I was sick for a week or so in September, so that set us back, but it should not have taken us 2 months. I don't know what the deal was, but by the time we finished it, my boys said, it was okay. And I have to agree with them. I love Terry Pratchett's writing. I enjoyed this book, but it's definitely not my favorite in the Discworld series. I chose it to start with because I wanted to introduce them to the world, and I think that's the best part of this book, is that you get to see different parts of the Discworld and learn the geography a little bit and the kinds of beings that inhabit the Discworld. So for that, I'm glad we started with it, but I think when we read Small Gods later on in the school year, they'll get a lot more out of it than they did out of Discworld. Their complaint with this book was that just too many things were happening. And it's true, there is a whole lot of stuff going on in this book. Basically, the premise of this one is that there is a tourist named Two Flower from another place, and he wants to explore the Discworld, and Rincewind is this, not quite a wizard, and he is tasked with giving him the tour. And Rincewind is very reluctant to do this. He would rather just be left alone. But there's a lot of money involved, so he gets convinced. So he is on this adventure with Two Flower. I love Two Flower so much. He's probably the best part of this book. I don't like Rincewind, and I think that's part of the problem with me enjoying this story, is that I just can't quite be on board with Rincewind, and I don't think my kids connected with him either. So I would say that if you want to start the Discworld series, I would recommend starting with either The Witches or Mort or Small Gods, and then read this, because I think you'll appreciate it more. I definitely got more out of it this time. I started with this myself when I started the Discworld series, and I didn't love it, and I almost dismissed the series entirely, but decided to do one more just to see, because I'd heard that, I think it's The Witches, maybe, was better. So I read that and loved it completely, and then I started reading more in the series. So I give this 3 stars. My boys gave it 3 stars. So it's good, but it's not great. So those are the books that I read in October. I am so glad it's November. Oh, like I said, October just went on forever. I'm ready to move on, but I'm also slightly panicked because it's almost the end of the year, and while I did meet my challenge of 50 books and have surpassed that, I'm at 65 books right now, I am just sort of stressed out that I didn't finish the Pop Sugar challenge, even by half. I'm not quite halfway through. I don't know if that's going to happen. I was reevaluating that this morning and thinking to myself that, yeah, that's probably not something I'm going to be able to finish this year. I'm a little disappointed, but there's always next year. So what did you guys read in October? I'd love to hear about it. Let me know down below in the comments and we can chat. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in my next video. Happy reading. Bye.